Worf wastes a beverage. Geordi could see the freckles on Worf's nose. And Q is nothing but a flim-flam man, whatever the heck that is. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today, we're doing a review of The Next Generation, Season 1, Episode 9, Hyde and Q. Story by C.J. Holland, teleplay by C.J. Holland and Gene Roddenberry. Directed by Cliff Bole. This was November 23rd, 1987. Where were you? How you guys doing today? Oh, by the way, sorry. Sponsored by Grandpa One.
Yeah.
Now, how are you today?
Good. I just realized that this episode aired the day before my birthday.
Oh, right.
November 20th. Yeah, mine's the 24th. And so let's see. I would have been starting the party early, I guess.
Yeah.
With Hyde and Q.
Hyde and Q. So this is already our second Q episode. So if you're watching this at home for the first time in 1987, you're thinking, oh, I guess this is going to be a recurring villain. Clearly, if he's in episode 1 and 2 together, and then episode 9, this is like even Cirroc. I don't think we even had Gul Dukat in two of the first 10 episodes of Deep Space Nine, did we? We waited a season or two.
No, we didn't have him. He's, I guess, the most reoccurring villain. It's so early on.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I you know what's funny is as I was watching this episode, so Ryan and I have a thing when we watch Deep Space Nine, we call it the O'Brien must suffer.
Oh yeah,
because
that's a big thing around. Everybody loves that stuff. Yeah,
right. Because they always make Chief O'Brien's character, played by Colin Meaney, suffer on our show. There's something he has to go through, and something miserable is going on in his life. And he has to suffer. He bears the brunt of the suffering on our show. And and now as I'm watching this, now when we're 10 episodes into this first season, I'm realizing that you're the suffering character.
I knew you were going with that. The Tasha must suffer. She suffered in her backstory. She's frozen in the first episode. She's captured by the guys in Code of Honor. Now she's put in the penalty
box.
Right. And then I thought, wait, is there going to be no Tasha in this episode? But then luckily she goes onto the bridge and she's like, I'm in a penalty box.
I just thought, I can't believe she started crying.
I did too.
I just went, no, come on.
Oh, I think
that's so out of character
for me.
Well,
it is out of character.
It's so out of character for her. I mean, come on. Yeah. This is the woman that, was abandoned at 5 on Hell Planet, survived all of that, could beat the shit out of anybody. And that's not to say she's not emotional,
right. We've seen that she can be,
But to cry that she's in the, like, I'm in the penalty box.
Somebody give her a teddy bear.
It's so wonderful to watch this, 35 years later and go, oh, no. That's just not the right choice in that at all.
Do you remember that scene? I mean, it's 35 years later, but do you remember?
No, I don't remember. Okay. It took me totally by surprise, the crying part. I remember being put in the penalty box and being brought. It was just the three of us on the bridge there for a while. Mm-hmm. Now, what was weird is, again, it was a little bit of the similar to when Tasha is impulsive at Encounter at Farpoint and he freezes her. So she gets her phaser out and she goes, Q, you've gone far enough. Boom. He does the same thing. So it's, keeping in that theme.
It's true.
She keeps stepping in it a little bit, or that fire in her takes over, and he calls, he stops it, nips it.
The vigilance. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
so that was fun to see. The thing though, which I found strange watching it this time, was he just arbitrarily says, "You're out of the penalty box. It's over." He had set up the situation that those guys, it was, beholden on, the crew to not mess up. One thing that they have a problem with, they're sent to the penalty box. So they cannot, it's beholden to them to save Tasha. But he just randomly, without any thought behind it, just says, "You're out of the penalty box now."
Now, I think this is the big difficulty in writing, is that, for example, when not Stan Lee, but the DC Comics, when they first created Superman, they shortly realized these stories suck. When you have somebody that can't get hurt, they can't get killed, they can't get anything, there's no real story. There's just a guy saving things, but there's no fear or arc or anything. Now, so when you create a character like Q, it gives the writers that kind of Superman complex of, they don't have to then check themselves and be creative and say, how do we get this person to do this, or how do we get this person out of that situation? They could just say, Q changed his mind. And and this will be one of the few times where I'll critique the writers and say that can be lazy, and that can be an easy way out. If you have an omniscient Superman type character that can just do anything and see anything, it gives you a way out, a pass, get out of jail free card in writing every single step of the way. So you don't have to make things connect. You don't have to tie the loose ends. You could just say, "Oh, but I thought that Q changed his mind." Done.
Right. That's interesting. What would have been better then is when he puts Tasha in the penalty box, he says, "I'll let you out when I feel like it," or not.
Totally.
Then you wouldn't have set up any of those, requirements that those crew members are the ones that, because then nothing happens. They don't do anything. You shift gears really quickly, and now you've got the vicious animal things coming at them.
Weren't that vicious?
Tasha's already out of the box.
Yeah.
Writers should have got, in combing through the script again, should have said, "Well, no, we've set this up. Let's not set it up to begin with that way. Let's just have Q be in control of the penalty box."
And can I just throw out one more thought just real quick before we move on to the next thing? And I know, Cirroc, you've got a lot of good stuff to add, but before we do, when you mentioned Tasha crying, now on the other side of this, I'm going to give the writers probably more credit than they deserve in this case. And the way I looked at it was, that's trauma. And when people suffer trauma, sometimes the reaction to it can come out in really strange ways, in strange times. It can come out 30 years later. If somebody suffers trauma when they're 7 years old, they can be tough and tough it out for 30 years. And then something triggers them, or they get weaker, or they finally address those issues. And that's a very real thing in trauma. Now, I don't think that the writers in the writers' room were like, "Okay, so here's, in 1987, but that's the way I justify it in my mind.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's no question about that. Trauma, can be buried, all you need is a trigger. That being said, I would think that by this time in Tasha Yar's career, and having gone through the Federation Academy training, she would have had a lot of psych training, a lot of time dealing, because she, by the nature of her position in, chief of security, where she's going to have to be in situations that are absolutely dangerous and confrontational, something that she has experienced more than anyone on that ship. So, I'm just thinking, oh, this is a woman that maybe she would cry in her room, or maybe she would seek some therapy, on ship, which, I probably mentioned there was this one scene with Troy that was never filmed. And it was that kind of situation. But I think in that moment where she's doing her job, and she's trying to think about getting through this and getting her away team back and getting out of this mess. It just seemed so inappropriate, an inappropriate choice at that point in time. I wish I had this attitude back then, and would have said, and would have been able to recognize it or catch it. I'm sure it was, presented as a moment where we see a different side of her, where she is this fragile and human. But
yeah, I think that's what they were trying to go to, and also play the chemistry between you and Picard, because there's never been a moment where he can be like the fatherly figure, yes, or the healer helper for you.
Right.
But I did think that the stakes were not high enough in this particular episode to warrant you breaking down emotionally in that kind of a way. If it was something where you really suffered a material, real loss, maybe you were handicapped, you lost a limb, something like that would, impede you from being able to do whatever you wanted to do in security, then I would say, oh, wow, she lost her limb, and this is going to, alter the course of her life, and she feels, fragile and vulnerable because of it. That would make more sense. But this Q kind of playful game scenario that he always puts you guys in doesn't seem to me to have a life or death kind of stakes involved with it. It's more like a game, a riddle, a puzzle, and
also, thinking about this, so he puts her in the penalty box. She's gone. Now he explains to the remaining crew what's going to happen here. So she's not even
how did she know that
conversation? So she doesn't even understand, unless she's, it's psychically coming through in some way.
She's
but
hearing it.
I mean, but she has no idea that, if there's only space for one in the penalty box.
Right.
Right. So there is no life or death, there is no state.
And that's why I think these things, and I have not seen it, but I think these kinds of things were covered in the 455 Films documentary, Chaos on the Bridge. It's like the chaos of the first season or two. And like you've described, Denise, if there are a lot of things and scripts were done on the fly, and things like that are things that normally might get caught on a second pass or a third pass or something. And so it does feel, when we point these little things out, it does feel like they were flying by the seat of their pants. They were making changes. Even this script felt like I wasn't sure if they should focus on one story or the other, because it kind of switched stories midway through. At first it was, Q, and they're on the planet and they're doing the French War. That's an entire episode. But then the second half just became, now Riker is a Q and he's got these things. Each of those are their own separate episodes. Those are not A plot and B plot that can be put together, or first half and second half. Those are separate episodes. And so, and I'd love to hear what was going on in those writers' room, because they're all great ideas. And I just feel like something was rushed to where they couldn't quite meld things together sometimes.
Yeah, and let's not forget the other story of helping these people that have just, had an explosion.
That would have been a B plot to one of those.
Right.
So the thing that I'm looking at is, I think they're falling victim from the kind of storytelling that was prevalent in the 80s. And the 80s, I think of Magnum PI, and I think of the A-Team, And those stories were very, kind of easy.
Procedural.
Yeah.
Procedural, very like you knew what was going to happen next. It was
Yes.
very had a formula to it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think that their formula for the Q didn't resonate well for me in this episode. I feel like they should be put in a challenge or find themselves in a situation prior to knowing that Q is the one responsible
that's
for
good
it.
stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that way they don't know why they're on this planet and what's going on, and start off with a mystery, like what we were supposed to go rescue these people, but we're on this planet, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. Now Riker has powers. We don't know what's going on. He has the power to do stuff, and it could be kind of unveil it that way, and then we find out after the halfway point or somewhere that it's all Q's concoction. But once they introduce it as a Q episode from the beginning, I'm like, oh, it's going to be a jokey kind of, dressing in different outfits, and it's going to be one of those, overly Shakespeare type of episode. And so
he did mention Picard knows Hamlet, which was cool because Patrick Stewart has played Hamlet.
Right. I mean, it was easy for him to make that transition, right?
I know, like dueling Shakespeare actors,
right?
The Shakespeare battle.
Yeah, who's the better Shakespeare historian? And so, I think in those kinds of way, I think the storytelling is too much like the time period, as opposed to breaking it up, making it more of a mystery. Start with the end or the middle and the beginning, and you know what I mean? Like move around the pieces so it's not so predictable. Because at the end of the day, we feel like Q's always just going to walk away and say, "All right, you guys get a pass. I'm going to go away from now." And that's pretty much how I feel like it's going to end, anyways, all the time.
Right.
There's there's nothing at stake there, or make one of the cast members vanish for an entire episode or two. And then, so we think that he has the power to, to kill off people or whatever. And then he brings them back at some point. But at least I know that there's, at the end of the episode, something, it won't all just go back to, oh, everything's back again and everything's fine again.
Well, and also this is finally, in this episode, an attempt to kind of explain the presence of Q.
Yeah.
Because he just keeps, now we see him again. Like, what do you, and they're even asking, it's like the actors are asking for us as the audience.
Yeah. What do you want?
What do you want?
Totally.
Why are you coming around? You're so, you have much more powerful than we are, much more, all this other stuff. What do you want with us?
Yeah. Why waste your time?
Yeah. And, so they kind of get to this.
And if you're so intelligent and all-knowing and whatnot, then wouldn't you know the behavior and responses of what they were going to do anyways? You would know that they would reject.
Wouldn't you not be surprised when you found out that the humans were these amazing creatures? You would have already known this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
But we did get a little bit more backstory on Q in that regard, like you were saying, Denise, that we got a little more backstory from the Q continuum. Apparently he answers to people. They took him away. They're more curious.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually getting backstory on Q now and the Q continuum, and we're going to get a lot more of that in the future. But what were you saying, Cirroc?
And I enjoyed that backstory. I did like a little bit of the backstory. I think they should have went more with the backstory. And they make Q somebody that is irredeemable and you can't root for. And to me, that's not really a sign of a good villain. There's a good villain has some aspect, some element of them that you root for, or that you think is just, that you admire maybe, or something about them. It can't be just all dark, it has to be some element there that, you're like, well, maybe this guy he's right about something that he's thinking, or, and I don't see Q being right about anything. There's nothing that he's, right about. It just seems like he's just there to interfere and play. I look at it like it's going to be a play episode. But having said all that, I do want to give credit to some of the performances that actors deliver, regardless of, whatever the circumstances. You get great performances. And I thought that Jonathan Frakes did a great job of transforming his persona once he got the power of the Q. You could see he changed his body language. He was standing there at one point with his arms folded.
I know. I was like, whoa, bro, slow down, man.
Wow.
Yeah. So he really took on the bravado and the ego of somebody who, feels invincible. And even when he was walking to the ready room, he kind of had this pace about himself, like, move out of my way, I'm the boss. There were certain elements and tweaks in his performance that I thought were great. Even the tone when he calls him Jean-Luc, he says, "All right, Jean-Luc."
Yeah,
and it was like he was talking down to him,
right?
And I liked that adjustment in Jonathan Frakes' performance. I thought he delivered that transition very well.
Yeah, what myself as a fan, what we like when we're watching Star Trek episodes for the whatever time is picking up on these new little pieces that we missed, And so for me, I have not seen these episodes in a very, very long time, which is great. So I'm catching these little things that I didn't notice before, like these little backstories of the Q. I don't remember that. I don't remember the moment that Denise had with Captain Picard on the bridge in the penalty box that kind of wasn't a penalty box. And so I think that what the writers were giving us a lot of times is these little nuggets, deliberately or not, that give us more insight into the characters and a little bit more, because we just want to know more about the characters, and all the episodes are over. So we're not going to get more episodes to do that. So we have to look into each episode to get little things that we missed. And then just touching again one more time about when Tasha and Picard had their moment that was kind of good, but kind of weird. I think they were giving us a moment that it's just Picard and Tasha. We had not seen that before. We had not seen a moment with just the two of them, especially with, kind of high stakes and also a strange situation. It was ripe for a great moment. Seemed like maybe the choice was a little wrong to have her crying, but, I appreciate the attempt. It would have also been cool to have her have like an actual moment of, I'm not going to be a sitting duck again. I'm not going to whatever, or something, there could have been something great where she put something out, in defiance, and that would have, possibly been better.
Absolutely. And if, let's say that was the choice, that, she stands up and which is much more her energy, at this point, when we've seen Tasha, she's always, like, oh no, I'm not taking that, you want to fight, you got it, let's go. And so if it would have been okay too for Picard to say to her, listen, you just take it easy, take a breath. It's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out together.
Yeah. But and it the performance was still great. That was, the other thing about that was you were still great doing that moment. Patrick Stewart was still great doing that. I mean, it gives us something as fans. We see this and we still feel, even if it may have been a choice that seems weird, later on, it's still a moment that we appreciate and that you still delivered very well. To Cirroc's point about the acting, because there was great acting throughout, like Geordi, when the visor was removed. Let's talk about that in just a minute, because we got to hop to our break. We'll be right back on Seventh Rule.